So basically,
welcome to Risk Management 1. This is we're talking about duty of care. Welcome, Danny and Carly and Ma, and we're talking about duty of care and dignity of risk. Sorry, I just remembered we need to record. I pressed the record button. Sorry. Right, it's all go here, isn't it? Duty of care, yes. Interesting.
What's your definition of duty of care?
What's my definition? I have an understanding of what duty of care is, and it is that we have a legal responsibility as workers to do that which any normal person would do to protect the interests of somebody that is under our care at any given time. Now, that might mean anybody. So if we look at our client and we kind of look at different model clients, we're going to call them clients because we're going to say we're in a work situation. So let's be clear about this. If you're a parent, and you had a 5-year-old child who wanted to go out on roller skates, what would you say?
no.
Not unless you have protective clothing on.
I live in a court and my kids play out in the court all the time. There's always an adult supervising, but they're always outside, out the front.
I think you let them do it as long as you make it as safe and risk-free as possible, maybe.
All right. So you've got a baby. You've got a baby, and your baby is learning to walk. Do you allow your baby to learn to walk? Or
Yes.
you say, baby, you cannot learn to walk because you cannot walk. And if you fall over, you will hurt yourself. Oh, dear. We can't let you walk.
You just do it under supervised, controlled areas.
So you don't do like me. You don't keep them in the cupboard
We're
forever.
not going to go, oh, the baby's learning to walk. Well, it will hit the stairs, kid. Come on. Like, but, you know, in the lounge room or just out in the backyard, you're going to go, come on, and encourage it. So
I saw this great thing the other day. It was John Wayne in the 1960s doing a video for how to teach your children to swim. And he stands at the side and he's got this kid and he's fishing. He pushes him in the fishing pool. He goes, go on then, learn to swim. I thought, yeah, you can't do that now, can you? That's not allowed. No, but there is a thing called dignity of risk. Children, you allow children, and you create correct boundaries for children, but you allow children to make mistakes, don't you? And this is the same. This is an interesting thing because let's say you're working with a young person, and let's say you're doing out-of-home care. Foster children, children in foster care who have been removed from the family home. They're in with a bad crowd. They're going to go out at night, and you know that as a worker they're going to go and take drugs. You know that that's what's going to happen, and you know they could take drugs, and let's say they could do something like chroming, sniffing glue, or something like that. Now I remember when I was 17, a friend of mine, a guy I worked with I had a Saturday job, a guy I worked with, he died chroming. I think it was his first time. He sniffed some glue and died. Now, that is a risk activity, right? So we've got elements of risk here. But young people, they're going to go and do these things. So what do you do as a staff member? Do you stop that person going out? You've got to bear in mind this model of the child when they're learning to walk.
I think you've just got to make sure he understands the risks and stuff associated with that behaviour and encourage him to still go out, but not, just the dangers in doing that. I don't think you can make him not go out at all.
You can't, can you? You're not really going to be successful in that regard. You might not have the right to say, one, you can't go out. If he's 16, 17-year-old, he's got certain rights. He's got a curfew that's laid out by the organisation that is providing foster care in a group home facility. He will go out and he will engage in all sorts of wrong activities because he's 16 and 17. We all did that sort of stupid thing. And as Carly said, I think you've done your due diligence if you've said you must be aware of the risks of the activities that you're involving yourself in, especially if you have evidence like you might smell some marijuana residue on somebody, or you might see some paint residue on their clothes if they're chroming or something like this. And some of those substance use abuse activities are extremely dangerous. You know, chroming is one of them. Very, very harmful. Have you ever seen anybody who's chromed for a long time?
Yep.
Their brain cells are fried. It is like instant brain fry. It is weird. As a substance abuse, I think it's the most damaging I've ever seen. I mean, maybe ice. You could argue ice is pretty bad, but chroming actually turns people into vegetables long term. You know, they become extremely damaged, I think.
Do people still do chroming? I thought no one did that anymore. I thought that was sort of like...
Where I'm originally from,
So
it's
1990, isn't it?
yeah.
I think
where I'm originally from, they'll just do it walking up and down the streets, and you know, you're going shopping in the main part of town, and they'll just be walking around with a bottle in their hand. And I've got to say, probably one of the biggest eye openers for me with just the damage it done was we were walking the dog, and we had one of them come up and they had the bottle in their hand, and they took a big whiff on the bottle. They bent down, they're patting the dog, and they're like, "Oh wow, do you have a puppy?" And it was just like the way they said it was just, they were oblivious to the fact that they were patting the dog. At the time, they were asking if we had a puppy.
Nuts. It is damaging substances. Anyway, so as Carly said, what do? You explain the risks for things. Now, this happens across the sector, and it goes including for older people. A lot of people go, older people, they can't do anything. They're not allowed out. Stay in your wheelchair, stay in your home, don't go anywhere, go and sit there and rot until you die. And that's kind of like, and in the past, people cosseted old people so much, but now there's this thing called dignity of risk. So this is a concept that you can Google this, and there's some good videos you can watch. They're only a couple of minutes long. Google dignity of risk and duty of care, and you'll find that as concepts, they're quite interesting because they provide you with this definition that if you explain to somebody what the ramifications of their actions are, then you are able to legally indemnify yourself by saying, my job is not to wrap people in cotton wool. And as Carly said, there's people have the empowerment to make choices. And if those choices mean that young person in our care goes out and damages themselves by taking substances, or they get arrested by engaging in illegal activity, or they get hurt because they decide to go roller skating, and you've said, be careful, you could fall over and hurt yourself. As long as we can get you some pads, and as long as you provide options to people, you've done your job. And if we think about this in terms of our assessments and in terms of our clients and in terms of risk assessments, we move into the next stage of this discussion, which is when we're in interviews and we do risk assessments, what are we looking for?
Signs.
I don't know whether it's immediate risk or...
Risks of what?
To themselves or to somebody else in the community?
Exactly, harm to themselves And so what's our duty of care there? How does our duty of care extend in the assessment process?
Oh, that's where it contradicts confidentiality, and that is one of the reasons where you can, if you feel that you have the right to do so with enough evidence, you can breach confidentiality, because the safety of your client is a priority and the safety of the community.
Good, but to what extent? Because we've talked about this.
Obviously not on Facebook, but within legal areas. So say they're going to kill themselves, you can, and they have like a close support network. Are you allowed to disclose it to the support network, or do you ring mental health?
Good questions. Well, who can answer those? They're curly ones, aren't they, Mark? Well, these are good. I hadn't thought of those, but we'll get to them. Let's talk about whole range first, though. You've got to the end there. You've gone to the end bit where somebody's talking about suicide. This idea is called suicide ideation, where somebody has expressed in some form or another a discussion where they're talking about ending their life. Or now, this might not be explicit. This might be hinted at in terms of, next week I won't have to worry about these kinds of things because it'll all be over. Right? You go, what will all be? I'm not talking to you about that. Okay. You might understand in that little interchange that suicide ideation has occurred. Somebody has expressed the idea that they will commit suicide. So suicide ideation is the term that we use for somebody who's talking about killing themselves. But there's a raft of self-harming behaviors that go all the way up to that. So let's talk about what's our duty of care for the raft. Can we kind of define what we mean?
What risks do you breach confidentiality on? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, what are the risks that we can talk about? People self-harming.
Like
Let's think of all
so
the
like
ones.
cutting.
Cutting. Okay.
Cutting.
Yeah.
Cutting is a good one. Cutting. What do we do with cutting? Somebody tells you they're cutting.
Where you would refer for counselling.
But do you breach, as Mar said, confidentiality and report them in terms of self-harming? Because that's what we're talking about here. What is the definition of self-harm?
If they're willing to cooperate, and depending on how much and how in depth they're self-harming and that, I would, if it's really bad, I would breach confidentiality with the support networks. And if they're not cooperating at all, then yes, I would breach confidentiality. If they're cooperating, they want to go to referrals, they sit there and let you go through the referral process with them, and they, aren't so at risk because it's minor or I don't know.
Committed to getting help.
If they're in compliance and agreement, I would then take another think about it. If they were at high risk and it was really bad, and they had no support networks, I would breach confidentiality. Would I be doing the wrong thing?
Lisa, what is confidentiality? What are we talking about here? When you say I would breach confidentiality, what is that? What is that confidentiality?
Confidentiality is what the client discloses to you.
Yeah, but in terms of what framework are we talking about? What does confidentiality mean? Are you breaking the law? Is it like you're selling their personal details?
Isn't confidentiality an ethical issue and the privacy is the law?
Exactly the point. So we're only talking about ethical actions here. So in breaching confidentiality, you make an ethical agreement with the client that you will protect the information they give you within certain boundaries. And so you're kind of making a promise to the client, but you do explain what the boundaries are. So
is it usually a good idea, or do a lot of people these days do sign an agreement so that way the client, you know, if you do
that's still not a legal indemnification that anything that you, now you've got to think about this. If you are a priest or a doctor or a lawyer, you have certain legal requirements to maintain the information that people give you is confidential, right? But we're not. We are caseworkers in the community sector. And so even though people might disclose things to you because they are believing that they have this privileged relationship, but you don't have that privileged relationship. What you have is a promissory arrangement, which means at the very most, somebody can get really pissed off and be unhappy with you and not be your best friend anymore because you've breached their confidentiality. It's not really any more binding than a best friend agreement that you won't gossip when they tell you their deepest secrets.
But if you make sure that right at the start that you tell them everything, you know, everything that you know, in certain instances, this is why when I'm going to disclose and break confidentiality, if you tell them exactly, you know, if you're straight up front with them.
I'm only telling you what the legal bind is here. It's no more than you saying to your best mate, if I tell you a secret, you won't tell anyone, will you? No, don't worry, you can tell me. Right? So that is how legally binding this confidentiality is. Now there's a professional idea that you go, if you just keep breaching all of those confidentiality arrangements, then they don't mean anything to anybody and nobody believes anybody. And so there's an agreement that we will all take part in and abide by this. So that's the thing. It's an agreement. Now, as Mars said, Mars got all these interesting little adjuncts. If somebody's got purple hair, that's it. No confidentiality for you. Is that right, Mar? certain levels of cutting, that sort of thing. But we need to be a little more clear about this. So what it is, I'm going to argue that what we need to do is we go like this. If somebody is disclosing that they will self-harm to the point where you believe they're in serious danger for themselves or somebody else, that you and that you've advised them of their rights and their responsibilities and the dangers of the inherent danger of any behavior they get into, then if you need to, you can go to your manager and say, I just had something curly. I think I should talk to someone about this, so I'm talking to you about it. Now, if somebody says they're going to commit a crime, I would report them. Your job is not necessary. I mean, if they're going to behave in certain ways that in some ways compromise your relationship with them, because they can't go around. You know, you might have a young person who brags, "Oh, we're going out to rob something tonight." You can't really report that. It's not really a reportable crime. If somebody's disclosing they're abusing somebody, a child, for example, you have your mandatory responsibility to report that immediately. And even if that is only a suspicion, you've just got the perpetrator's name, some child is potentially a victim there. There's not many clients I've known who will put themselves in harm's way for the sake of attention by saying I'm an abuser when they're not an abuser. They just want some attention from somebody. So if somebody discloses that to you, I would report that. And I'd also consider lots of other things reportable, like if somebody says they're going to go and steal from a specific place, go on a robbery or commit acts of violence. Acts of violence are particularly serious acts of violence towards other people, then you have a responsibility to other people to report that. If it's general, you can't report it. But other workers will tell you, you have to be keeping this, your clients, you know, they are your clients and you have responsibility to the clients. And you do indeed, but not to the extent of everything else. You have a responsibility to the law as well, to be just behaving like a normal, decent human being. And if people are disclosing weird things to you, like they're going to commit crimes, then you might want to think about where your responsibilities lie. And that they're not necessarily, I don't know, if somebody came to you, this is an interesting one I heard. Let's say it's Christmas Day and your next door neighbor knocks on your door and says, hey, my husband stole all the Christmas presents for our kids this year, and he just told me, do you report this crime to the police? It's Christmas Day.
No.
No.
Well, you've got no evidence either.
No, but let's say the wife came. Let's say the wife is upset that the husband has stolen a bunch of Christmas presents, and do you go and make a report to the police and say, you know, I've just had neighbours said that her husband's come and handed out her kids stolen Christmas presents?
Well, there was no risk. No one else was at risk.
It's kind of outside that idea of risk, but somebody's mentioned a crime to you. Would you report that crime?
No.
Depends on how happy
Maybe maybe run through some options that they might have if they would like to report it to the police, but I don't think you would do that.
Well, some people might.
I don't know, if I had someone come with, like, I don't know, you never know. You could have someone turn up covered in blood going, I just murdered my wife. Well, of course I'm going to damn near, you know,
That's a bit different.
mandatory reporting, you know?
With an do you report? No, we let that go. Maybe it's not true. No. Right, sorry, going off topic there. So we're clear about this harm to other people, harm to themselves, but the cutting thing, it's an interesting one, Mark, cutting. Because self-harming, chroming, when people talk to, what about young people taking drugs of various sorts? Ice is a particularly nasty drug, isn't it? Ice, and it's very addictive. People take ice, people snorting ice, and then not only does it damage, especially young people, where these drugs do lifelong damage to the way their synapses fire and they are able to think about things. So that sort of thing. That's really somebody disclosing quite a risky activity, isn't it? Somebody taking ice, as well as falling into all sorts of bad cultural elements, like having to commit crimes to be able to get money to pay for more drugs because they're so addictive and things like that. So would you report that?
Well, wouldn't you try and get them drug and alcohol counselling?
You might try and steer them that way. But would you report that if you said, whatever you know, somebody's carrying substances in the office that you're with?
Well, it depends on their... Why are you going to keep hitting us with these hard ones tonight?
I don't know.
Is this just like an ethical dilemma thing? Because, okay, say if they were under the influence of the substance and then they said they were high, well, technically, by law, there's not much that they'd be able to do but probably lock them up for a couple of hours anyway until they were sober if they were acting erratically. If they produced a substance in front of you and then were acting erratically, then yes, I guess you would if it was to, you know, possibly put you at harm or themselves at harm with the behaviour they're already behaving erratically. But otherwise, at the end of the day, majority of it is drug taking and alcohol taking is most people's individual choice, isn't it? It's the crimes they commit around it that would be a problem. I don't know.
What do we think, Carly? Somebody pulls out. What about somebody pulls out a handkerchief and a little packet of white powder falls out of their pocket? What do you do?
I don't think there's a lot you can do. I don't. I think I would probably just give them a warning that the substances aren't welcome at the venue, and that not to do it again. If it happens again, then there'll be further action. But I don't think you would report us like a small bag of powder in somebody's pocket. But I think it would be very important to explain that it is not on and that it can't happen again.
But different people will have different approaches, right? Someone who might be a counsellor or a caseworker, they might be full-on Christian. They might be really anti-drugs. They might have a different perspective on the way drugs operate for Mr. B. Can I go for a walk? Can I go for a walk now? Can I? Sorry.
What would you do in that scenario?
Me, I used to work in Footscray where people would be shooting up in the smoking area at the back of the facility, literally with their.
And would you report that?
Pull their trousers down and shoot into veins in their groin. You know, that's Tuesday. Let's move on. People with substance. I personally don't think, but different people have different standards. You've got to recognise that I have another thing, right? Because we're originally talking about risk here, right? Now, there's another element of risk. There's another layer of this. So what happens if you end up barring somebody from a service or denying a service or creating barriers to service access for somebody, and they're participating in risk-taking activities, but in removing them from the service, you actually leave them exposed, whereas if they remained involved in the service, might actually have an ability to curtail or limit their
but is that not putting the employees of the facility at risk, that, you know, maybe he might be okay, but there's a chance he's going to come in with drugs again and act out?
But act out maybe. I think we draw a line that we deal with the behaviour as it comes. Maybe somebody might come in with a sawed-off shotgun. You know, that might be a thing that happens, but you can't predict that will happen because people take certain drugs. Now, unless it's speed, you can't predict that.
Would you ban somebody that came in with a gun?
Oh,
or
God,
would you not block him from the
ban them. I'd be slamming the door in the face, calling the police,
exactly.
under the desk.
But you're still going to have the barrier.
The alarm buttons under the. I'd be crying. I'd be begging and praying at the same time. What do you think?
Exactly.
I'd be throwing chairs at them, all sorts. No.
Would you be thinking about the consequences of you barring them from the service?
I'd be thinking about the back door. That's what I'm thinking about.
Exactly.
And how fast I could get through it. Barring them, that would be the last thought in my mind. And I promise you, it would be the next day. I'd be going, we should bar that person, shouldn't we? So people do. I've worked in services where people become very aggressive because they're anxious, that they're in desperate need, and that they might be denied a service. And so in their hour of desperation, they become very aggressive because anger is a go-to place for people who are afraid. So you've got to talk to people like that and try and get them to work with you and try and talk them down. But if they can't, if their behavior becomes, and you set boundaries and you say, here are the boundaries, you need to calm down in order for us to work with you. If they're not going to do that, then you deny them a service. In terms of barring them, you probably don't bar people unless they've committed an act of violence, then you would. If somebody has been violent, and bringing a gun in would be violent in my book.
Yeah.
That's kind of terrorism, isn't it? Anybody who produces a weapon to instill fear is acting like a terrorist. That's what terrorists do. Now, I'm not saying everyone's a terrorist, but I'm saying it is intimidation, and the idea of intimidation would not be accepted. So you would say to somebody, you won't get a service here again. Don't come back. Like that, personally. But it depends. It would depend on the service as well. Because
yeah, do they have like doesn't every service have different policies and procedures?
They do. I've been punched in the face one day, and the guy's come back in the next day, and you've given him a service, because it's the next day. Come on, get over it, move on. So it does depend on what service is. If it's a counselling service, probably not. But if it's a homeless agency where people are in desperate need, yeah, you have these boundaries that are very flexible. But so in terms of need and in terms of risk, in terms of consumer risk assessments, if you are trying to support somebody, you're going around reporting them for everything that they've done, or you might be exposing them to risk by not providing them with correct service. So you have to be careful that we have very hands-off approach. If somebody takes substances, that's not my business. My business is not the police. I'm not responsible for policing anybody in that regard. That's how I see myself. But somebody who might have a very extreme reaction to people who take substances, they might see that concept differently to me. So I can't dictate how they deal with that. But personally, if it's got nothing to do with us, I don't police any. I try, me, I'm not even a policeman in the classroom. I don't believe that's an effective way of working with people. Policing people is not the way forward. The way forward is helping people to understanding a process that is going to be positive. And that is kind of where I direct people. And in terms of risk assessments, people crossing the road, yeah, I've taken. I was working in London years and years ago with this big black bloke. He was huge. He was much bigger than me, and he grabbed me like a rag doll and shook me in front of a dog that was in the street. He was like afraid of this dog. He was, and still, the deal was, they said, if you walk down the street, this was in London, if you walk down the street, this guy will just follow you. He'll just follow behind, no problem. He'll be walking about 10 feet behind, just keep an eye on him, look back every now and again. So I'm walking around the streets of London, and then this guy, he's non-verbal, and in the middle of the street, I turn around, and I see him pull his tracksuit pants and underpants down to his ankles and start to have a pee in the middle of the street. And it was amazing. There were these people, but they're all walking away from him. Nobody saw this massive black bloke with his pants around his ankles having a pee in the middle of the street. It was nuts. And then he pulled his pants up and just kept walking. I was like, how did nobody see it? I was like, anyway. So risk, you've got to allow people to make mistakes. And if he was arrested for, by the police for exposing himself in public, the police would probably be, fairly, understanding that this person had a disability. And so you I have a loose, hands-off approach to let people make mistakes unless they are at risk of killing themselves. That is kind of the rule. If that guy was arrested, I wouldn't be in trouble for not taking care of him properly, and he would be represented in court. He wouldn't really have understood what any process is. He'd have been represented in court and let off anyway for being unable to make decisions, and the service might say, don't let him go for walks again. That would be unlikely. That's the sort of, you sort of see that how things play out in real life and go, well, that's how we deal with stuff. So are we kind of there? We've got an understanding of risk assessments and how we manage duty of care against reasonable understanding of risk and our responsibilities, which are varied, and understanding that our job is limited to providing services and creating opportunities for people, not barring people because they're not doing what we tell them to do. That's another thing, that you respect other people's lifestyle choices, right? If somebody's gay, that's their business. If somebody is transgender, that's their business. If somebody is a Christian, well, that's probably not on, is it? But sorry. But yeah, people, as long as you need to be inclusive and understanding of people for however they choose to do things. So that's how I kind of manage risk in that framework, and knowing that. Oh, by the way, the duty of care is the responsibility an organisation has to look after their clients in their care. You don't have a legal duty of care, the organisation does. So you might be considered negligent in your taking care of somebody, but that's not a breach of duty of care. It would be, you're charged with breaching duty of care. That's not a crime. You can be charged with negligence with somebody who is in your care. But an organisation can be charged with a breach of duty of care. That can be a charge leveled against an organisation where they used to have, you get it now, you still get it now, elder abuse in old people's homes, where you get these care workers who are abusive to older people and they mistreat them. That's called, the organisation is found to be at fault with a breach of their duty of care.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
But that's them. That's not us.
Well, you have a duty. You have an ethical duty of care responsibility to do that which a normal person would be doing to take care of anybody in a situation. So, if there's a crime that happens in the street, let's say let's say there's a gang running through Melbourne, like happened New Year's Eve one time recently, a couple of years ago, running through Melbourne, and you're out with a client, and the client is beaten up by members of the gang, and you stand by and watch that happen, and you don't intervene. You're not at fault for anything. You've gone out with a reasonable expectation that person would be safe. Circumstances left the person exposed to a situation where they were at risk of violence. They were beaten up by a gang of people. You're one person. You can't fight that gang of people. And if you had jumped in and tried to fight them, you could be killed yourself. So you're not required to jump in just because that person is in your care. So that's another thing, you're not required to push the person out of the way and jump under the bus yourself just because you're looking after somebody. That's an interesting concept, ethically understanding what you're meant to do in that regard as well. Do that which a normal person would do in those circumstances to take care of people in their care, and that comes down to things which are interesting, things like medical treatment as well. Do you provide medical treatment to people in your care? No, because you're not a trained nurse or doctor, unless you are, where you might be held accountable, but even then, not likely. If someone's to die in your care, why is that person choked on some food? Why did you not help them? Because I don't know how to apply the Heimlich maneuver, and I didn't think of the Heimlich maneuver because I don't have medical training, and I don't know.
But if you failed to call like 000 or that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Even though, yeah.
Very good point. If you fail to call, then you are negligent, especially you do that which a normal person would do. So you don't expose people to risk by not managing stuff. You can allow somebody to go out on the roller skates, and this goes down to if you've got children, you let your children go out on roller skates and they fall over and they break a bone and you don't bother dealing with that. It's a law of you being negligent in your duty of care to that child to take care of them properly. Not really negligent in duty of care, negligent in your care of that child. As a parent, you don't say parents have a duty of care, do you?
No.
No, it's their responsibility.
Yeah, it's a responsibility, isn't it? And so that's what this idea of duty of care is. Do no harm is another one of those mandatory things. You're meant to do no harm. That can be considered one of the standards that you can work towards as well. Was that Mr. B? Go for a walk, you say? Okay. Is there any questions before Mr. B gets his walk?
It's out. We've got assessment due at the end of this week. Yes.
Yes, there is assessment due at the end of this week. Assessment 1, which is what? What is assessment 1? Do you remember?
The five services and the 250-word report.
Good.
Thing.
Like that. Easy.
Okay. Can I email you because I'm a little bit confused about the report? I got the rest of it.
Was it? No, we can talk about it now. Email me what? Go on, Mr. B can wait a minute.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I have been really busy with my daughter lately.
250 words. 250 words. That takes like 5 minutes. You can spit out 250 an email.
I'm so one of those annoying people that go over 250 words usually.
Oh, don't worry about that.
Don't
worry about 250 words, but the word limit isn't a thing. It's not a thing.
Okay.
It's a guide. It's a guide, isn't
Okay.
it? It's more about information. If you don't have to write you don't even have to write sentences. You can write dot points.
Oh.
Okay. God. Don't even worry about the report. No, you write some dot points. It says, how do organizations maintain their up-to-date information with other organizations? So write dot point 1, interagency staff meetings. Dot point 2, visiting different organizations. Dot point 3, making telephone calls to organizations. It's just how do organizations. No, that's it. Don't just do that. Just do that. If you want to, you can make 250 words by saying organizations maintain information by. There's like 10 words there, right? Do that 10 times.
Yeah, that's how I nail it every time.
That's how you do it. Yeah, but if you write dot points and the information is correct, nobody's going to go, she didn't write 250 words. That's it. That's a fail. So don't worry about that. That is, as long as you nail how it is organizations stay in touch with each other and keep up their information and make sure it's current and up to date. And how would you work in an organization if you made a change? How would you do that? I would, you might put some changes on your website. You might post an email out to a mailing list. You might attend meetings. You might attend network meetings. You might attend interagency coffee mornings. You might go to regional networking functions, like they have workshops for addressing strategic initiatives, like how do we deal with this problem of homelessness. That occurs every now and again in statewide response and workshops. So you might go there and make announcements, things like that.
Can I ask a quick question?
By all means.
I found the report part's the easy part for me. I sort of struggled a little bit with finding the 5 referral services because of like my small community where I'm from.
You're just going to Gunnedah Community Services, aren't you? Every time Gunnedah Community Services. That's right. That's what
I've actually been meeting with a lot of agencies around town and talking to a lot of case managers, but the only problem I have is with the referrals. You know how it has the notes section of the referral? Do I have to write points about, say for Aaron, like what his circumstances are and why I think he should go to that service, or am I just...
Up to you. You know, no one's going to read that. As long as you've identified 5 services. No, there's no standards that say that, right?
You totally...
In the marking standards, that doesn't say, in the marking criteria, it doesn't say, oh, did Danny write down that no, she didn't fail. Oh, no, it doesn't, it doesn't mention the notes. If you think there's some special notes that you might go, so the notes might say something like, this service is only eligible for people under the age of 25 or youth. So Aaron might be there, but that same service might not be available for Maria or Kylie. That's the kind of notes. That's the notes. Nothing else.
Yeah.
If it's something fairly, you know, but even then,
I think I'm just overthinking it too much. But
no one's checking. No one's going online. Gonna die. Right. Let's check them all. Danny failed. He bloody lied. Yeah. Look.
So can I do like say 2 referrals for the same service but for different for the one client?
Of course you can. You live in a regional area. If the same service provides, same organisation provides different services, and that they are appropriate services for the clients, absolutely you can. Totally.
Okay.
So. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the client. You live in a regional area. That's exactly what this is designed to do. It's designed to help you demonstrate knowledge that you know how to find specific services for certain client needs. And it doesn't matter that the same service is available in that region for the same needs.
Yeah, for a number of different okay, cool.
That's right. It's a good question as well.
Yeah, okay, cool.
One more question.
Yeah. Go on then. She froze. Oh, I froze.
Write the name of the client that I'm referring on there, or are you guys able to guess based on what I've written on there?
Well, we would be able to guess because you're going to kind of go things like mental health service for counselling for sexual assault, or specific services. But you might want to write in the notes. Good for that could be what you could put in the notes, isn't it? Good for Aaron, or this is for Maria, or But everyone can pick. Based on the needs that we looked at, you're going to pick a whole range of different services. Did I froze? Did I freeze in the middle there? All you guys froze, and I thought, my internet connection is unstable. So.
Yeah. Hey Ma, I just copied and pasted the file for like say Aaron right at the top of my assignment, and then I put 5 pages worth of the referral forms underneath, and I just hope that's how they sort of distinguished each client that way.
You don't need 5 referrals for each client. You only need 5 referrals for all 3.
You only need 5 altogether. So you only need 5 or 2 for each of the clients.
Danny's done 15.
Did you just say 1 or 2 for each client? I thought I had to do 15 all up.
No. Crazy town.
No wonder.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
5.
Oh. So 5 is a total for the whole
You need
3.
two
Yeah.
for 2 and 1 for 1. 2 for 2
Oh.
clients and 1 for 1 client. It's much easier now, right?
Yeah. Right, I only did all this work for no reason. Oh, at least I know a lot more about what happens in my community now anyway. So
Yeah, you do. That's true.
that's an upside.
That's how they trick you into learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well done, Danny.
Awesome.
We done?
Thanks for letting me know that.
Oh, well,
Yeah, we're good.
Sunday?
Dog.
We'll be back on Sunday for any mop-up with any last-minute assessment questions. Yes, sorry, Mark, more?
I have a funeral to go to this weekend.
Oh, you
So
don't
I'm
have
not
to be
sure.
there. I do. You don't have to.
Okay, so what I'll do is if I have any questions, I'll just flick you an email and then just kind of wait to hear back. Because I'm trying to push this assessment to be done because I'm supposed to leave because it's a few hours away. So I'm supposed to leave Friday. So I'll just flick you an email, anything. So you may just have me bugging you over the weekend. That's okay.
All right, all right. Whatever I can help you with, Ma, that's my job. I'll be happy to help. So you just take it easy.
Okay.
But don't feel a responsibility to be in these Zoom classes. It's not.
Oh, but
I have to be here. I nearly forgot today. I got the calendar that went, oh yeah, it's Wednesday, isn't it? Oh, all right then. Right, I'm shutting up. See you on Sunday. Have a good one, guys. Any questions? You know where I am. Thank you. Thanks
See you later.
for coming.
Hey, guys.
Lovely.
Bye.
Bye.